Welcome back to Burn the Ship, the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs to professionals to help you go all in on your business. I'm your host, Ezra Brown, and without further ado, I'm going to allow my guest to introduce himself.
Thanks, Ezra. Pleasure. My name's Gary Harpst. I'm a Northwestern Ohio resident and been in the technology industry. Kind of the themes of my life have been business, technology, and faith. So got a family, four grandkids, 3 kids. It's a rich life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. 2 of those I love. The family and faith I love. The technology side, I'm still working on that side. But no, Gary, kind of tell me a little bit. Kind of tell me how you got to where you are today. Obviously, give the people the background information, like, kind of where you started to kind of where you're at with your latest endeavor.
Well, in my mid-20s, when I was 26 years old, I kind of woke up from the college experience and thought, well, what's life all about and where am I going? And I really began to study a lot of different worldviews and faiths and those sort of things. And I finally became a Christian and felt like the explanation of why we're here and what we're doing resonated with me. And so at that point, I began spending time with other believers, and we 2 other friends and I started a business. Clear back in 1980, your listeners weren't even born yet. And but the reason I mentioned 1980 is that every so often in the world there's inflection points of some major change. Like right now, we're seeing AI and AI agents emerge, which could transform the way technology is delivered. Well, back then, computers were all mainframe computers and micros were just beginning to creep into the language. And so we started a company to build software right at the beginning of that inflection point. And little did we know what kind of a ride. We ended up building a pretty successful company that had to grow at 30-40% a year just to keep up. And we ultimately combined with a larger competitor in 2000 and sold that to Microsoft. And so that 20 years as a CEO and a founder in a high-tech industry became this laboratory for me of, if my faith's important to me, how does that interject with trying to grow a business so fast that you don't even know what's going on? 30-40% growth, you're doubling every 2 years. And so balancing all that, family, faith, work, technology changes happen. That's the laboratory I really cut my teeth on for 20 years. And so when we sold the business, I personally didn't care for larger businesses. I'd like to be closer to the front lines and knowing everybody. And I'm kind of not hands-on, but I like to know everybody. And
right, you want to know what you're working with, know who your team is that you got.
Yeah, exactly. For. So I spent some time thinking what to do next, and I concluded that we had just been through. We worked with a lot of partners, a lot of customers. We had 50,000 clients. We had 1,000 partners who sold our products, and I'd seen them all go through rapid growth scenarios, and what the pain that causes, and so that caused me to say, maybe I could help save some people some time and some hair. And so we started a business called 6 Disciplines that was really a process business about how do you form strategy in a small business and how do you manage growth. And we used a lot of technology, but a lot of best practices of strategic planning, change management, performance reviews, and all those sorts of things. So we did that for about 20 years and had a few hundred clients, and it was more of a consulting business. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I'm at an age where most people would be slowing down, but I never. One of the things that faith does for you is it integrates your purpose into everything you do. You don't think about work and family and home. You just think about life and how to live. Use what God has given you to the fullest. And so I've never thought about the idea of sort of a point where you stop working. To me, it's just you still live in your purpose and use what you have. So I felt a couple 3 years ago like I was being nudged to to move in a different direction, which was take my 40 years of experience in business and technology and try to teach people that were more faith centric in how they wanted to run the business,
Right.
how to integrate all three instead of just two.
Okay.
So that's a new stage for me. I did it myself, but I never really thought about how to build a platform that would help somebody else when I was back at 30 years old to live my faith, build a growing business, and just do a good job on all fronts. So that's
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's a long answer, but that's become the what my focus is right now.
No, that's awesome. So, going back to 1980, saying technology, that's definitely something where it was kind of the nuanced thing, is getting into that coding side, kind of all that stuff of doing it. Because my granddad was big on the Macintosh computer when it first came
Yeah, yeah,
around, and he did a bunch of coding for Lockheed Martin and stuff like that here in Marietta.
yeah.
But whenever my dad talks about it, going back, because I don't know, I only know technology from whenever I've been alive to it.
Yeah.
But that's what he said. He's like, man, it was just like you get on there and play snake game. Essentially is really what you had to do, like what you got to do on it. There wasn't really, you couldn't look up on the internet. There wasn't a Google where you could go look at everything.
Yeah.
So what's kind of been those challenges that you've seen as technology's changed? What is the challenges that you've seen to help you grow, or what has helped you?
Well, I think that's a really good question. There's some things about life that are principles and are enduring, and then there's some aspects of it that are changing, but even the changing is a pattern you've seen before. So
Right.
I'm going to kind of answer your question into two threads. One is sort of understanding the business you're in and the industry and what's happening, and the other is the people side. And the one of the things I find interesting is a question my sociologist teacher, or instructor in college asked day one. He says, "Why is it that humans have progressed so much technologically, but have not progressed socially at all?"
Right.
And this was clear back at the time we were landing somebody on the moon and all that. And so my answer uh, is going to speak to two threads. The answer to that question has taken me years to understand, is in the physical realm, in the realm of technology. The world we see and touch has a predictable set of rules. We have the rules of chemistry and physics. And so when one generation learns something 1,000 years ago, the next generation can learn those rules and the same rules apply. And so
Right.
we have this accumulation of expertise and knowledge on a set of rules that still apply. And therefore, having wisdom in this, where you're at and what world you're in, where you're working, is to understand what is changing in the world of technology. So in my world, we went from mainframe computers to mini computers, and then sea change to personal computers, which moved the interface and all the data to the desktop. And then you went to the networking, and then the internet. Now
Mm-hmm.
we're going through a completely different transition with artificial intelligence, where the way we conceive of what an application is and solving problems is different. So a key learning, if you will, is to be able to step back and understand the bigger picture of what's changing in your world around you. And it's kind of like catching a wave. I saw a record wave the other day where somebody was in a 100-foot wave, or
Yeah.
those things only come along so often.
Right. And
And
then, and that's very interesting. I haven't actually ever heard anybody, because I talk to a lot of tech guys doing this and just kind of out networking around here. I've never heard somebody put it in the way that technology, how have we not socially grown like our technology's grown? Because that makes sense, man. Because humans, I feel like we're regressing socially.
yes,
Like my generation. Like
well,
we
that's
don't sit here and have this same banter as we could have right now versus, you find them, obviously there's the diamonds in the rough that are around my age that can sit there and talk about the business and do things like that. But most of the time it's just, they want to go work their 9 to 5 and get in and out, or go work some social media job.
yeah. Well, you're ahead of me in that recognizing the significance, because it's taken me decades. But this other path, the reason we have not progressed there is that human relationships. Our body's made of 100 trillion atoms, and they're integrated with a set of rules. And if those rules didn't work, we wouldn't work.
Right.
But when it comes to relationships, there's a similar analogy in that you you get married or have a relationship that can lead to children. That's a bonding. It's just like hydrogen and oxygen make water. A man and a woman can make a family. And what are the rules that hold that family together? Well, they're not the laws of physics.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a predictable enforced mechanism where gravity always works and electromagnetism always works. And therefore, every relationship, how many relationships do we have? We have relationships with our parents when we grow up, and then we have a relationship with our spouse if we get married, and then we have a relationship with our boss, and our boss has a relationship with his boss, and the company itself has a relationship with another company and
Right.
customers. So here we have the whole fabric of society is based on a set of relationships that are not governed by the laws of physics.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah.
it does.
And
I've
so
never
you're
really thought
left
about it
with
that way.
some pretty important questions in life about, if you look at the world, there's about 4 major worldviews. There's maybe 15% of the world thinks there is no God at all, or there's no source or mind behind the creation. And then there's sort of the Eastern Hindu, that view of the world. And then there's the Muslim view of the world. And then there's the Judeo-Christian view. And everybody, I don't argue with people about what they believe, but what I do recognize is we're all in the same boat, is we're trying to figure out how to relate to people. We're trying
Yeah.
to figure out how this hidden world, this thing that doesn't have the laws of physics, works.
Yeah.
And Christianity in the Bible has some very specific principles that it says, if you don't follow these, it won't work. Now, you may not
Absolutely.
agree with them or not, but I think what you will agree with is what we're doing isn't working.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, Gary, so tell me this, so you've, being through and having a career and kind of jumping in and out of, endeavors, business partners, everything like that. What would you say would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that's trying to go in and kind of start a business?
Well, number one piece of advice would be to work with somebody you trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some friends that were thinking about getting into a business together. You come out of college or whatever, and you have good friends, and you say, "Oh, let's be roommates," or let's be going into college, and then you find out that relationship thing turns into a pain.
Absolutely. I was a college baseball player. I know that too well.
Yeah. So when you get into business, you are yoking yourself to someone, especially if it's partners, where you have equity ownership.
Right.
And I guarantee you that the stress of that will eventually test the relationship, the test of the business.
Yeah.
And so to me, step one is, if you don't have a relationship with somebody that you can trust, then no matter how everything else is built on that foundation. So I have the same 3 partners I had 40 years ago, and we've started several businesses together. And people will say, that's actually what people react to. They can't believe we're still friends. And
Yeah.
and they say, well, how did that happen? Nobody else does that. And I said, well, it's because we had something to us that was more important than any of those businesses.
Right.
And our business got started in a prayer group, and our purpose was to say, how can we best, if faith is real and God is real, then we should be living it out 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and that includes our work. And so our purpose in starting the business was to honor God. That was bigger, and no business ever, a disagreement, was going to split us on that bigger purpose.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying everybody that starts a business has to be a Christian, but the point is, what is it that unites you and your partner?
Right.
And if all of it is a product idea, that won't be enough.
Right. Yeah, got to be something. Yeah, that makes sense. Because one of my really good buddies, him and his older brother, and his best friend started a big restoration company in Chattanooga. They got like 6 or 7 locations now. It's a very successful business. And they had a falling out not too long ago while we were all, at a football game. We were all in Athens. And I was like, they had a fallout right in front of everybody on a Saturday. Everybody's having a good time. I was like, but that's how I guess the pressures, things like that,
Yeah.
can be that way.
Yeah.
And I've never really, that. I guess when you put faith into it and put your trust in the Lord, I guess it helps a lot.
Yeah, well, it's an aligning principle. Yeah. So,
Absolutely,
uh,
absolutely. But you know, and with that, congratulations on that, because that is awesome that you guys been together 40 years. That is actually incredible. And it seems like you guys have had a lot of success together. And what would you say has been your favorite endeavor of all the ones you guys have started?
well, I think what I'm working on now is the most challenging, because what I worked on in my earlier years dealt more with the technology and the business aspects and how to build good software and relate. Now we've got a company called LeadFirst, and we're in the process of launching a platform that is a combination of technology and business best practices, but also faith.
Right.
And and so once you cross over into the non-electron world, into the relationships with people, you're in over your head.
Yeah.
And so I like what I'm doing right now because it's bigger than I am, and I don't know how to do it, but it
Yeah.
keeps me young.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really pursuing it.
Yeah, and if you care to elaborate, kind of tell us a little bit about LeadFirst AI.
Well, yeah, sure. LeadFirst is, it's been a long time for us to figure out what it is. And in the CRM world, customer relationship management world, we have learned that some people's jobs is to manage relationships. And so who in the sales world doesn't have a CRM? Because without it, you have to keep track of who would I talk to, when, and what, all the information you need to manage a relationship.
Absolutely.
And so does the technology make you good at relationships? No. You have to care about the people you're talking to, but the technology makes it possible
Right.
or enables you to be good. So LeadFirst has taken that concept and said, think through all the things that a leader has to do to manage a relationship with an employee. Change it from customer relationship management to employee relationship management. And then we're optimizing all this technology stack that we've learned over the decades around supporting that leader being a better leader. And just like a CRM, if you make a commitment to a client to follow up, you better follow up.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't sound very, quote, spiritual, but if you don't follow up, it shows you don't care about them.
Absolutely.
So there's this integration when you care for an employee. If you don't do their annual reviews and do a quality version and do them on time, you're sending a message that you don't really care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to put more of the tools for how do you have a good conversation with an employee? How do you know them better, know their family, and how do you know what their goals and dreams are? You may not be able to satisfy them, but at least if you take the time to know them,
Right.
you might be able to improve it. So that's what we're doing, and we're piloting now. We're looking for about a half a dozen sites that want to partner with us in this, and we've got 3 and looking for a few more.
Absolutely. What do you think are going to be the biggest challenges whenever you launch?
Well, I think it's finding people who want to do this.
Okay.
So in other words, putting software in does not fix anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and CRM does not make you a good salesman.
Not at all.
And so that's the problem we've got is we can only help somebody who really wants to do this. But if somebody who thinks they can throw our technology stack and make it a substitute for them not caring,
Yeah.
it won't work. And so
Absolutely.
I think our hardest challenge is to set who is it that's really ready, and pick those. And I'm not
Right.
critical of those that aren't ready. I wasn't ready for many decades.
Right.
So I'm not critical. It's just a stage of life thing.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you guys got a good product because you are looking, kind of what your ideal person is that you're trying to work with. You know your ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
What's that business size that you guys are kind of looking for? You got that roundabout?
Well, I like to work in the space that I grew up in, which is the journey from, say, 25 employees to several hundred or 1,000. That's a journey I've been down and understand.
Right.
and what happens to entrepreneurs? They start something, and the focus is totally on the product, which makes sense. And you build something, and you surround yourself with that first half a dozen people that can help build it. And
Yeah.
gradually, if it's built well enough, you start to have to sell it, and then you have to support it, and you start adding people to do those things. And somewhere you wake up and think, oh, I'm no longer in the product business. I'm in the run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere around 20, 25 people, you get another layer between you and the front lines, and then you get to 500 people, and there's 4 layers between you, and most people don't navigate that very well. So
Right.
our target customer is a growing business on the journey from whatever 50 employees to 500.
Okay.
They're smart enough to realize they're going to need help to get from 50 to 500, and they
Yeah.
want to do it in a way that takes care of people from a biblical point of view, that they truly honor every single person their business is created in the image of God.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And then what would you say what are y'all doing to kind of grow the business right now? What, I know that y'all are piloting, looking around, but what are y'all kind of doing in search of those people or in search of those developers, anything like that?
Yeah, we've kind of got 2 threads going on. We think our first priority is, in fact, to get the pilots and take a lot of feedback from them, and we are, and we're getting tremendously good uh, insights into how to say something, or how to position something, or how to change the interface in the software to make it more friendly, those sort of things. So
Yeah.
that's our biggest thrust. Secondarily, we're we're researching where the faith-based business owners, who they connect with, who they communicate with, how to find them,
Mm-hmm.
and network with those and build relationships that way. And the good news is, the more time you spend, the more time you realize there's an awakening in the country that running a business well and doing it in a way that honors God has more impact. At church you go a couple hours a week, but a business, you've got somebody for 40 hours a week. And if
Mm-hmm.
you treat them right and help them grow and develop, and you're doing holy work. It's important work, and there's an awakening that business owners are really in a position to do much, much good.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think I love what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you.
That's incredible. So kind of give us this. So, it's been a wild ride for you, been entrepreneur, in this space for 40 years. What if you could go back and do one thing different, what would it have been?
Well, this is unique to my faith point of view, so it may not apply.
Absolutely. It's your point of view. This is all you right here, Gary.
Yeah. Uh, I I talked to a guy about 3 years ago who said something I never really thought about. He said he thought of his business as a platform for kingdom building. Now, that's a phrase I'd never heard.
Right.
And I'm familiar, the Lord's Prayer talks about, Jesus talks a lot about his kingdom. My kingdom is coming. And what he meant by his kingdom is a place where God's rule and love is dominant. That we get. But this guy said he thought of his business as a kingdom impact platform. Now, what we thought of as our business for 40 years was a place we treated our employees right, but we never said a core strategy of the business is also to have kingdom impact as an integral piece of what we're doing. It was a
Right.
side thing where we'd give profits and those sort of things to other organizations instead of integrating the mission of kingdom impact within the organization. So here's
Right.
an example. The guy who shared this runs property management. He has tens, 50,000 apartments around the U.S. And in every apartment building, he gives one apartment for free to a young couple who is faith-based, and they have to put 20 hours a month in just holding community events and getting to know the people in that apartment complex and loving on them. That was his way of doing kingdom impact in his business.
Yeah.
Well, you fast forward 30 years, he's averaged better return on assets than Warren Buffett. He's run 24% compounded returns for 30 years.
That's
And
awesome.
and so here he's got people investing. His retention rate instead of being turnover rate in the United States is somewhere in the low 70s apartment dwellers. His is like 39.
That's
And
incredible. But
because people value community.
I can understand that. Yeah, I see that because it's one of those things. I lived in an apartment building for 4 years. And I completely see that because you don't have anybody there that cares. You don't feel like nobody cares about you and who's running the building. All they care about you're getting that rent check. Is what
Yeah.
what you're thinking about, and that makes sense to have people going out and making everybody feel involved inside of their little community because every little apartment building complex is a little community. There's 1,000 people that live in there. That that
Yeah,
is
that's right. And so yesterday we had one of our pilot sites was we're having this conversation with the senior leadership about they don't like the turnover they've got. There's too many people leaving on the front lines. But then we talked about, well, how much time do you spend with them? Do you know them personally? Do you ask about the family? And he said, no, those people, blah, blah, blah. They label them those people.
right.
Right. And that's when you ask what are some of the challenges it's like going to church and changing your thinking about who you are and how you relate to your neighbor. The same thing has to go on inside the organization, that you begin to
Right.
see Sally as a person that
Right.
has challenges just like you do. And you begin to love on her. And guess what? Your turnover will go down. But you don't do it to drive your turnover down. If that's your
Right.
motive, you do it because you
Absolutely.
care about her.
Yeah.
And then a byproduct is, hey, I'd rather work for you than somebody else.
Absolutely, yeah. Because everybody was that person on the front line essentially at one point
Yeah.
in time,
Yeah.
and you know how it feels to be there, and that makes a lot of sense. Because I've been on the front lines. I'm on the front lines now. I'm 25, still doing it. But that does make a lot of sense because it does. Whenever the people you work for care about you, it does help a ton. And that's one thing I'm very fortunate. The environment I get to work in. I've both the owners of my company I've known my entire life, so I've been around them. It's like a athlete locker room in this place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
But no, and that and how you said it is building that kingdom. That man, that's I haven't heard it put in that exact way, but I do have a chiropractor I do a ton of networking with, and he says it almost the same way. He's a Vietnamese guy. He's a Christian,
Uh-huh.
and that's how he pretty much posts on Facebook. And essentially that way, I looked at a post this morning whenever I was looking at your email, it was right before, and I seen it, and I was like, wait, Dr. Pham talking about putting back. It was three kids that were probably around my age that just graduated from school or chiropractic school, or they're in it, and they're opening a business, and he was investing in them. He's talking about it, invest and help out the community because it'll give back to you. Because somebody, they might not take that insurance that he takes, or he might not take the insurance that person comes into, and they can send there, and that's just a business to go back and forth. And if you don't, put time in to build with that person, you never know what could happen. That
Amen.
makes a ton of sense.
I'm with you. Yeah. It really gives new meaning when you get up in the day and life's a battle. Every day is a battle doing your job, but it gives you a why, a bigger why.
Absolutely. That's one of my main goals for the new year is win that first battle every day. Win that first small battle. You just got to win the small ones, and then the big one will help. That one will turn up one day.
Yeah. Who was that famous military guy says, make your bed?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was it.
Man, I have no idea. I had to look.
He had 10 rules for living, and his first one was make your bed. And he said exactly what you said. He said,
Yeah.
that's my first win. I'm in control of that. I can do it. I can do it right. And so I started my day off with a win.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it's not hitting snooze on the phone right when you get up. You can hit snooze for 10 more minutes or 20 more minutes, but get up and just go do something.
Yeah.
Get up, go read, take a shower, go outside. Take a cold plunge, whatever it is that you do, whatever makes you go, do it. You know what I mean? Because we're only gonna get this one time. Don't mess it up. Try not to mess it up for as long as possible. Which
Well
we can't.
said,
We're human.
yes.
We're human. We're going to anyway. But no, Gary, kind of tell me. Kind of went through what your ideal people are, what it is that you guys do, but kind of tell me what you're gonna do, Gary. Whenever you sit down, you got LeadFirst AI running, big, you got 50 people, 50 businesses, ideal people. What do you want to do with your time whenever you get some time?
Well, at some point you have to, we call it mentoring. Jesus called it discipling, but really you just have to bring other people along to be able to do what you're doing. And the best way to do that is to walk with them, to mentor them.
Yeah.
the difference between teaching and mentoring, we do need teaching just to introduce knowledge, but knowledge is not skill. And
Right.
so at my stage, every day I'm thinking about, am I growing the people that are around me so that when I'm not here, they will have the tools they need. So that's my focus at this stage of my life. I got my kids, and how do you pour into other people? You know,
Right. Absolutely. I love that.
that
And then,
never stops.
yeah. And then you said you got a big family tree, so that's awesome. It sounds
It's
like you've been
growing.
here
Yeah.
and been blessed, and it's awesome. And then, are you a Buckeye? I don't know if,
Yes, I am. I too much of a Buckeye. I grew up in the Woody Hayes era, and I almost literally get upset for days when they don't win. So I actually quit watching them because I got so upset. And I did watch the last game. They looked pretty good. And so,
yeah, it looked pretty good the last two. I'm a Bama fan, so I've been a trust fund. I grew up in the Saban era my whole life, so
yes,
I've
yeah,
been a trust fund fan. So this year was kind of tough for me.
yeah. My son, he's always complains as soon as we lose a game like Michigan, or he says, "Well, they should fire that coach." And I said, "Okay, who are you going to get to
Yeah,
do better?"
yeah,
And I used Alabama as an example. I said, "Here's a prestige program, top drawer for the last 100 years, and it's not easy to bring in a new coach and put in a new system. And you
yeah,
can't even judge this coach by this year because there's so many things changing. You got to give him time. But it's not easy to change the coach. It's like changing the CEO and this top leadership of an
yeah,
organization,
yeah.
and
And
it's
that
painful.
absolutely, and that kind of segues me in. What do you think? Whenever y'all's product is running successfully, what do you think that change timeline will look for somebody like that's willing to do the work? What do you think that looks like in that same sense? Because this obviously it's not going to work. Might not work month one or month two, but month three, four, five.
Well, I think the timeline is different depending on your background. So, like Ryan Day, who's at Ohio State, he went from being an assistant to the head coach. That's a longer transition. He knew the players and the people because he was inside, but he didn't know how to be a head coach. And
Right.
so he's learning that. And just last year, he brought in an offensive coordinator, and he's what, 5 or 6 years. So I think for him to truly transition from an assistant to a head is 5, 7 years, and
Yeah.
truly, because he has to
Yeah.
replace his leadership team. He has to recruit a 4-year class of his own, not race. It's a long period of time. Now, when you bring in somebody like Alabama, who he was a head coach, where was he at?
At Washington.
Washington. So he knows head coaching. He knows the system, and he knows how to do that. But he still has to recruit his own player. It's a several-year process, but it isn't nearly as long as somebody who's not been a head coach.
Right. And then let's flip that over to business. And flip it over to your side. Is what do you think? Lead First AI. What do you think that's going to look like for somebody's turnaround? That's willing, obviously. What do you think that turnaround looks like for somebody if they're really
Well,
actually bought in?
I think it's multiple years. You like anything that's back to the chemistry we talked about. It holds organizations together. What seems to unite people is either opportunity or adversity. Like the World Trade Center gets bombed, so everybody gets united. In
Absolutely.
an organization, if you can build some momentum around something, then it creates some alignment. It becomes a chemistry that gets people on the same page. So we try to figure out ways to, when we come into an organization, to give them some quick wins so that there's some momentum and people will invest behind it. But
Yeah.
really changing your mindset about how you see the person next to you or below you, and beginning to treat them differently and seeing the benefit of that, that's a lifelong pursuit. But I would say in a year you'll see noticeable improvement. In 3 years you'll be much more mature and in a more sustainable mode.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And then Gary, last thing I got for you is where we got burned the ship from.
No, I've heard the story in South America when they landed.
So that's exactly what it is. Hernan
Yeah,
Cortez thought he landed in America, landed in modern day,
mid America or somewhere. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know where.
landed in modern day Mexico. And he made his men disassemble their ships and pull off everything and burn the ships and said, That's his sign to his people. We're going to make it here and die trying. And obviously you did this 40 years ago, especially going into technology business 40 years ago. Like, you obviously had a light flicker that not many people did, because it's something where, you know, if everybody got in technology 40 years ago, there'd be a lot more millionaires walking around the earth. But, you know, what was that burn the ship moment like for you? You know, give us that emotion whenever you realize, you know, you and your three business partners were going to go in and kind of, you know, work together and build something. What was that like?
Well, this is what happens when you do become a Christian, because your decision making changes. You get married, your decision making changes.
Absolutely.
You know, if you want your marriage to last, you bring your spouse into that. And in a relationship with God is the same way. And so when we started the business, that was the burn the ship moment for me. I said, I will do this if I feel like this is in line with what God wants to do with my life. I was trying to listen to what he was saying, and he doesn't speak audibly to me. I just read the Bible and listen to other people and look for changes in my desires and those sort of things. But anyway, this went on for months, where I just would pray and say, should I start this business or not? I was the CEO, and it wasn't going to start unless I went. And then one morning, I just woke up and had this inner peace that was the burn the ship moment. I knew that I was supposed to do this, and
Yeah,
who can explain that? You know, how do
you
you
can't.
know to marry the person you marry? You just know.
Right.
And so what was interesting, I worked for Marathon Oil Company, which is a large, successful oil company, and I went in, and on that day, I got offered two different promotions. The same day that I had had my burn the ship moment before I went into work. And what that did for me was it tested the burn the ship moment.
Mm-hmm. With the devil on the shoulder and the angel on the shoulder talking to you.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, no, no, fellas. In fact, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to leave. And so,
They're probably like, is this guy crazy?
yeah. So that was a burn the ship moment. Believe me, we had so many things happen that we thought we ran out of cash. One time we were within 2 weeks payroll. We didn't know how we were going to get out of it. We had so many disasters, but the burn the ship moment never left. I always knew that I was supposed to do it, even if it failed. I
Absolutely.
knew that it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. And then, Gary, tell the people where to find you, because I believe they're going to want to look and kind of see what you guys kind of got to offer.
Oh, sure. Just go to our website, leadfirst.ai, or my name, Gary Harpst. I have a book that recounts a lot of what I've learned. It's called Built to Beat Chaos, Biblical Wisdom for Leading Yourself and Your Others. And this was published last year by Wiley, and God sort of led me to just narrate what I had learned and all the battles. So if anybody's interested in that book, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so send it over to me so we can link it down below so they can have it to look at.
Oh, okay.
And awesome. Thank you for coming on, first and foremost. And then, once again, burn the ship.
Well.